This is the Go Radio Business Show.
Thomas,
Morning, Willie.
good to see you.
Have you recovered from the football?
Just about. Yeah.
Yes.
Having that 13-point cushion has made me go over it. All right.
It's taken away. I think I heard Ali McCoist on the radio this week saying that there was some Rangers player out watering his plants at the back of the house. But I don't know what that means, Willie. You can maybe explain it after the show.
No problem. I'm sure Ali would have been a wee quip in there somewhere. You know, it's good to see that he's smiling again. You know, poor lads. Listen, we mentioned it last week. I'd like to start. Remember, I said to you about I'd love to know how buying gold works.
Yes, and I said I have no idea.
Right. So this week has hit a new record.
Right.
$3,025 an ounce.
An ounce.
Right. And I remember telling my son way back in the day when it was $1,200 an ounce, I think you should buy gold. And I think, to be fair, you know, he lives in Geneva. I think.
Did he listen to you?
Well, I think the people in Geneva told him, they said, well, that'll be a first. If he did, that'll be a first, right? So I'm actually going to see him today. So I'm hoping to walk in and see this big pile of gold he's got in the kitchen. But no, but see if anybody is listening or watching us on YouTube, see if somebody could just drop us a wee line telling us, how would it work if you wanted to buy gold? Do you get a certificate and somebody else keeps it? Does somebody send you something through Amazon where you get a wee gold ring or a wee gold bar? But obviously, with the uncertainty in the markets, see this.
I think it's seen as a safe haven.
Yes.
So I don't think people get really rich from it. I mean, I could be wrong.
Yeah.
But since you mentioned it, I keep seeing it in the papers hitting the all-time highs.
Yeah.
Probably not the time to buy it at an all-time high, but what do I know?
Yep. Unless it's gone, you know, it's only going one way.
Yeah.
But I think, and especially if history shows that in time of conflict,
And
it's a very safe haven.
Right? It's a safe haven.
So I don't know if you cross over the border from France to Switzerland with all your gold bars in the boot of your car or whatever, but it does seem to be a safe haven. But it
used to be Kruger Rands, Willie.
Exactly.
Back
you're back in the day, Sam. So
Kruger Rands.
The Boer War, you know, of Africa. When, you know, I mean, we're laughing about that. Remember when people couldn't get their money out of South Africa, they were all going to the dentist and getting gold filling. This is true. This is not a laugh, right? And they were trying to get their money out in any way.
Is that true?
I swear. Yeah, you can go and buy a motor and just, you know, take your big molar out and get to the dentist and say,
You heard it here first.
Keep
gold fillings.
Keep the change. But that's interesting. But the side to that is that it is gold is doing so well because of the uncertainty in the market.
Right.
Right. I see today that the pound again is strong, 130 to the dollar. No good if you've got a business in America, I might add.
But you're having to
I'll not be bringing
dollars
any
into
dollars.
pounds.
Not be bringing any dollars back for a while.
No.
So I thought I would just start with that.
Well, there we go. So if any of our listeners or our viewers are out there and they understand gold, send us a wee message. Willie wants to be gold member.
Gold finger.
So what else has been happening, Willie?
A bit of boats. Seems like we can't build ships anymore.
Oh, goodness. So I've got a real issue in my head, Willie.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to have arguments in my head, all to myself. I don't argue with anybody else, but argue with myself. So we have got a shipyard and the government own it. My first point is the government shouldn't be running businesses. They shouldn't be running the trains. They shouldn't be owning ferry companies. I've said in the past, the only thing that seems to have worked was down at Prestwick Airport, but they need to get that into private hands because that did safeguard an awful lot of high-paid jobs down at Prestwick. So I got that. But this week, and I'm sure all the listeners and the viewers know that Ferguson Marine were in for ferries, electric ferries, and Calmac, or whatever they're called, gave the contract to a Polish yard.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, what do you think about it, Willie?
Well, it's quite obvious that the CEO knew before anybody else because he quit 2 weeks ago.
Do you think he knew, Willie?
He must have knew. He must have been told and he jumped before, you know, obviously the bad news came out. But I think what it tells us is that other people have moved on, other countries have moved on, right? Whether it's Turkey building ferries or Poland building ships, whatever's happened, whether it's the labour maybe we need to look at, you know, what's happened. That the people, is it cheap labour? And then ethically, do you want to give people, you know, I don't know about Poland, to be fair, I'm not saying that about Poland with cheap labour,
Yeah.
but I know there's a lot of, you know, migrants, you know, been into Poland, but I don't know the answer. But obviously we're losing out, and I've got to be honest with you, I think it had to have been substantially less for them not to give the order to Ferguson Marine.
Right. So I think we've got to start again. And in underperforming businesses, which at West Coast Capital, we do turnarounds, it's the hardest thing to do.
Yep.
But I don't think I've ever found that the workers are the problem, Willie.
No.
It's always the management. And the higher you go, the worse it gets. And whenever I go in, I go and listen to everybody, and we usually get rid of the management. And I feel sorry for the workers. There's 400 people at Ferguson Marine, and they've had to deal, because it's become a political football, and they've had to deal with bad press every week in, week out, you know, 4 times over budget, 7 years late, or I'm getting the numbers wrong, but you know what I mean.
You're no far off.
And therefore, the people who are turning up to work every day, the engineers, the welders, the whatever they are, the apprentices, I feel sorry for them. So I think the government need to get out of that business. They need to put it in a steady footing. And then what would I say? They went for a bid, and the politics this morning has all been saying, oh, they should have got it in an uncontested bid. Well, I've got a problem with that, because we need the best for the Scottish taxpayer.
Yeah.
You know, because that's who's spending the money here.
Yeah.
So I don't have a great solution, but I think we've got to look at it. And I often thought, as you know, I come from a coal mining background, and I often thought, you know, when Margaret Thatcher came in, she ripped the heart out of the community. It was maybe inevitable, but she could have did it an awful lot better. And I'm just thinking, if we gave the contract to Ferguson with good management, though, Willie, that would be my proviso. They've been through so many bad people in there at the top, not the workers. Because if that yard folds, Willie, we've got to pay benefits, we've got to pay unemployment, people will get unhealthy, and there's all these unintended consequences. So could we get somebody really good in there to say, right, this is what we're going to do. We're going to build a world class, because we are building ships in the Clyde, aren't we?
Yeah,
British,
BAE are building wonderful ships.
BAE. So
Military ships.
I don't know enough about it
Yeah.
to come up with a solution, but I was saddened when I read this.
Yeah.
Have you got any other thoughts?
Well, I think it's a really good point, and as a kind of segue into something else you've read in this week about the OECD, about Scottish politicians. And I think, see if we go back and look at the last 25, 26 years since devolution, right? Remember, in Labour were a big part at the start of being in charge, right? We've not got many things right, right? And it didn't start well when the first project was building the Parliament building.
That was a farce.
Right, so original cost, 30 million, ends up cost over 300.
Wow.
Years and years late.
I actually forgot about that.
Years and years late. And there's a building today that allegedly won awards where there's actually windows in that building that it's impossible to clean. Impossible. Right.
So they didn't think of the facilities management and the design.
100%. Make that point there. It should be the heart of every architectural design. But if you take that and then look at all the other things, right, that we have not got right. Last week you mentioned sadly we've went back in the World League table for education. Right. Or NHS, it's on its knees.
Yep.
Right. I think we have to go back. The OECD said this week that politicians in Scotland need financial training. Imagine the OECD, how embarrassing is that, right? But what it leads into is to go back to our old pal, right, for Singapore, right? Lee Kuan Yew,
Yes.
who said, pay nothing, you get nothing. So I'm saying if we want to go do something radical in Scotland, let's make it that clever people are busting to become politicians because they get paid so much. Right?
Yeah.
You made the point there about good managers, right? As entrepreneurs in business, the management takes the credit, the management takes the blame. End of. Right? Everybody else is kind of in a nice way told what to do or guided. Right? So when people come on and moan about, you remember with the chat about Elon Musk getting 20 billion for whatever, it was because he enhanced the value of the company, right? So he was accountable, and he got rewarded for it.
Yeah.
So people should not complain.
And he's
when
taking
people,
the hit now.
Exactly. So when people get big money, people shouldn't complain. But going back to politicians, I'm saying it now. Glasgow Council, I believe, has got a £1.6 billion annual budget.
Wow.
Right? And the elected members in there, most on the rank and file, get £16,000 a year.
My
right?
goodness.
This is crazy.
Right.
This is crazy. And most of them, to be fair, on paper, are part-time. Right? So for me, let's get more power to our local authorities, but let's get much better people running them. Let's make it that they get 80 grand, 100 grand, but so it's no cost us any more. Don't have as many words, right? So get the budget, get what you've got, and have a third of the people you've got at the moment and pay them 3 times we get it paid, and you get better people. And then if you take that and you do the same in Hollywood, think about it. In Singapore, the equivalent of MSPs get paid $500,000 a year.
Wow.
And what it does is it makes sure there's no corruption, right? And it makes sure you get the best of people. So you get highly educated people running the country. We've got people in the moment running our country making big decisions who've never had a job outside of politics.
It's a problem.
It's shocking.
And if you go to Tony Blair's book, his latest book on leadership, he actually addresses that, Willie, because it's often got me, a politician comes in and all of a sudden they're running the health service. Now that must be the hardest brief to run. But what is in their background that would give them the credibility to run the health service? And even when they're just getting maybe to understand their brief, they get moved and they're now in charge of education. I mean, you would not design a system like that if you were to start again.
I'll tell you now, you mentioned that a couple of weeks ago about the wee thing that James Watt has set up. Yeah, right. For our equivalent to Dodge. And we should talk about Dodge, right? But I'm telling you right now, you who know about efficiency, who know about running businesses, you would be horrified if you've seen how ineffective loads of departments within the civil service are. You would be horrified, right? There is people getting paid every single day that are accountable for nothing, right? And what we need to do is and again, but to be fair, if we're talking about paying the politicians, a lot of the civil service get paid well, but we need to get clever people in the civil service as well. And we need to get more people who understand about what you need to do to be more entrepreneurial, right? Instead of, here's the rules, here's what we're doing, we can't do that. And on that, leading right into that, I see that Rachel Reeves wants to take a machete to regulation as well, and she's telling people that she wants productivity up by 25% in relation to regulation and making decisions.
Okay.
So really what she's saying is, look, if we've got big ideas for spending billions and billions of money, we're not going to get held up by people who want to come and talk about we need to move these bats or these moles, right? We need houses for people. Let's build a lovely wee reservoir where we can put the moles, right? Build lovely tree houses where we can put the bats. But let's move them away from where we can progress and build houses so we can get, the 92,000 children in Scotland who are registered as being homeless, right? I wonder what the moles and the bats and the voles as well. I wonder what they think about that.
Oh dear.
Right.
So
there's a segue for you.
So I think that's really good points, Willie. I think Keir Starmer is grasping the nettle here, and him and Rachel Reeves are talking about it.
Yeah.
Call me a cynic, but I'm not sure. These are big decisions and there's so many vested interests, Willie.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't agree with Elon Musk's just slash and burn, but there must be a more intelligent way. But if you want to bring everybody with you, they're going to be nodding while stabbing you in the back here. So you need a really strong person.
What you need to do is, no, as you say, is don't come in and have a go and you've not got a solution. So what we're saying is, here is a solution. Pay the people the right money, attract the right calibre of people, and we'll help to put the country, back where it should have been.
So here's a question for you. So the Westminster government are taking this stinging nettle and they're grasping it on benefits.
Yep.
And Liz Kendall's going to say something. We're recording this show, so it's going to go out after she's said. But Westminster are doing that because the Labour Party's in the early stages of their tenure.
Yes.
Whereas in Scotland, we have an election next year.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens in Westminster with Labour, the kickback, and people will say this is terrible, might and will affect Scottish Labour in the elections, Willie.
Yeah.
Now, I looked up, and these are government numbers, Willie.
Yeah.
So I'm not making anything up here. These are government's own numbers. So in terms of benefits, in Scotland, there are 2.8 million people in Scotland who are either on one form of benefit or getting a tax credit. 2.8 million people.
Mm-hmm.
We're only a population of 5.3.
Mm-hmm.
And that's costing the taxpayer £720 million a year. Now, if Westminster grasps this nettle, and the Scottish government, the SNP government, have been very good politically in saying, oh, we're better than them and we'll give you more benefits and therefore vote for us. I mean, it's a bribe. Well,
Yeah.
But if Westminster cuts it, the Barnett consequentials go down. In the UK, I couldn't get the Scottish figures for this, but in the UK, there is more than 700,000 people claiming incapacity benefits, Willie. And in Scotland, I got this from the Fraser of Allender, which is part of Strathclyde University, 14% of the working age population are on a disability benefit, as opposed to 9% for the rest of the UK. Now, these are a lot of numbers that I'm throwing about, but I know people who are saying, does it pay to work? It must. We must encourage people to work. It gives them a purpose. It gives them a status. It gives them, we need to change this mindset. But there's over 700,000 people, Willie, more on incapacity benefit than there was before COVID. So something's happened in the country. And I admire a Labour government in grasping this, but I think the SNP government will play politics with it for the next election. So what about all these numbers, Willie? How do we deal with it?
Well, when I see the numbers as well, I was astounded. To see there was 9 million people in the UK on some sort of benefit. And then there was 3 million people incapacity across, right? So there's 3 million people on sickness or for whatever reason not able to work, right? But what happens is anytime any politicians mute this, what you get is you get the media running out to get the worst case.
Of course.
The worst case, right? And say, look at this poor lady who's stuck in her house, who can't do whatever, blah, blah, blah.
And they've got benefits.
Exactly. Whereas you need to look across the rank and file, and there's no doubt that something can be done to help that. Because let me tell you, see for the people who are up in arms at this, right? And I'd like to know more and more about where they're going to cut.
Yes.
But see if you don't, I believe in Scotland alone that we're heading towards that half of all the money that we receive in Scotland will go in social.
It is.
Right? That can't be right. That's dangerous.
And listen,
you're getting to the tipping point.
You and I, you've been Labour for 51 years, I think you told me the other day. I would like to think of myself as a caring capitalist.
Yes.
So we don't want to cut benefits of somebody who can't take care of themselves. We are happy to have that burden and to pay our taxes to help people who can't help themselves. But there are so many people now, and the benefit system, is so complicated that people have become addicted to it,
Yes.
in my opinion. Now, I don't know how many people are at it. I don't want to be like the Daily Mail here and cite, oh, well, Johnny's milking the system. But it needs to pay to work.
I would have loved a balanced media report last week when this was first muted. They go to two houses where it's terrible for the people there and they need more help. How did they not go up to Dundee and film the two young guys coming out of the High Court, going in just to get a life sentence for murdering somebody? They look like two young fit guys with a boy band, right? But the two of them are on £1,200 a month benefits.
Right.
Two young, fit, able guys. Why was there not anything on the news about that? And I'll bet you there's thousands of them, right? Thousands and thousands of them. So I would just say, let's have a look at it and let's make sure that the people that need help get help and they maybe get more help, right? But let's make sure that the people who don't need help, that have got to realise you need to work. These two young guys are getting £1,200 a month. That's tax-free. There'll be people working just now in jobs. They'll be lucky if they're taking home just more than that.
And they'll get housing benefit and they'll get this and that and the next thing. But we're not some right-wing fascists here, Willie. Yeah. We're saying those who need the help should get the help, maybe even more help.
Yes.
I like your point. But we need to encourage those who can get back to work.
Yes. I think hopefully next week it'll be a wee bit more cheerier.
I know, I do think it's kind of doom and gloom this week, but there's some good news up in the north of Scotland.
Let's finish with that.
In Snag.
Yes.
Now, I've never been to the port of Snag, but Highlands and Islands Enterprise, easy for you to say.
Yeah.
So that's government money is going in up to £10 million to take advantage of the port for offshore wind, Willie.
Yeah.
Sumitomo, can't get my teeth sorted today. Sumitomo are already there for their deep sea cables up at Snag. So this has got to be good news for that part of the world, Willie.
Well, I think overall there's about 500 million already committed. This is fantastic. And it goes towards what we were talking about last week with climate change. Let's get a drive to get to clean energy for everyone.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
The Go Radio Business Show with Hunter and Haughey. Hit subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and never miss an episode.
Tom, great guest again this week.
Great guest.
Right. Brie Read, who's the founder of the Snag Group. Brie, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Hello, Brie. How are you today?
I am really good and really excited to get to talk to you guys as well.
Ah, right. So you're coming down the line from Oxford today. But tell us a wee bit about how you get started and some of the characters that you've come across in your entrepreneurial journey. I think we know a few of them, but we'll let you tell the stories. So how did you get started in this endeavour, Brie? Tell us about your childhood.
Oh, wow. Going right back to the beginning. I grew up abroad. So I lived in Asia and Africa growing up. So particularly in China and Hong Kong. And China was really interesting to live in. So I lived in China from like 1983 to 1989.
Wow.
So really China, and not anywhere near as, absolutely incredible as it is now. But my dad built one of the first power stations in China.
He built what? Sorry, Brie?
One of the first power stations in China.
Right, so that's why you were there. Wow.
Yeah, right in the middle of nowhere. There was absolutely nothing. And, they spent a very long time building this incredible power station. And after they turned it on, a whole kind of village/city emerged overnight. It was like absolutely incredible. I've never seen anything like that. And my dad took me the very next day after the power had been turned on into this kind of village setup. And we walked into a bar and there was an ice cold Coca-Cola fridge and there was a bar to sit on. And I had an ice cold Coca-Cola in this village that had appeared overnight in the middle of China, thanks to some electricity. And it really instilled in me this idea that, people are so ingenious and innovative and incredible, and you just give people a little bit of something to work with and they can do these absolutely incredible things.
Yeah, but the
So-
ingenious part of all that, Brie, was the fridge that cooled it, not just the
how
energy.
did they get the fridge? Like I
Well,
don't
it's a
know,
fridge
but it was-
magnet, you know. And
I think I sold them that bottle cooling cabinet that you get that Coca-Cola from.
so Brie, I'm always fascinated with people's backgrounds and how is there any link to what they're doing? But it sounds as if you were right in the forefront of pioneering in China and taking it all in. So do you think it had an effect on you?
I really do think it did, and I think moving to so many places and seeing so many different cultures, that you realize the kind of just base level of what a business is, right? It's buying, it's trading, it's those kind of bits I find really fun, where I think sometimes now it's become a bit, it's a bit sanitized. It's not about things anymore, and I love selling actual good things. That makes me really happy.
Right. Okay. So you've saw the great changes in China, and then did your dad move again?
Yep, so we moved after that. We were in Dubai. Again, when Dubai was just a desert. When I lived in Dubai, our house was on Jumeirah Beach.
Right.
And I could run out from the house into the beach. And now that's like the most expensive property in the world. And it was just, gonna run into the sea. And when you look at that area now, it's incredible. I went back to Dubai last year and was just like, how is this?
Brie, I remember it when it was like that as well. I was in Dubai when there was only one hotel.
Wow.
1983.
Crazy, isn't it? And it's just desert everywhere you looked, and there was one very small golf course, and that was it. That was Dubai at the time. It was hilarious.
So was your dad putting a power plant in there as well?
He did the docks there.
The docks.
He built the docks.
Let me
Yeah.
tell Tom an
So
interesting story
anywhere
about the
there's-
golf club. The golf club, because they couldn't, they didn't have the water there, not to grow the grass. The greens were actually hard baked sand, right, with
Yep.
like petrol for them to harden them. So like petrol, they were brown. The greens were actually brown. They put petrol or chemical in them, so they were rock solid.
Wow.
So the greens were actually big, giant, flat bunkers. Sorry.
Right. So you've always been in places that are just at the beginning of huge innovation, Brie. So fascinating stuff. So anyway, keep on with your story, because it's fantastic.
Yeah, so I was then in Greece for a while, which was really interesting as well, because they have a very entrepreneurial mindset, and people work lots of different jobs. You don't just work one job, you have 3 or 4 jobs, and it's got a very kind of interesting balance between work life and your home life. And your home life is still really important, but you need to be able to work to fund the kind of fun parts that you have of it. And then eventually I was like, well, I'm going to have to go somewhere for university. So I picked Scotland. So for the first
Why did
time,
you pick Scotland? That's interesting.
because I've always loved Scotland. Like I adore everything about Scotland. So I had the opportunity to move there. So I went to uni in Dundee, which was it was a lot colder than anywhere I'd ever lived before then.
Yes,
even
so
despite
Dubai,
the
China,
climate.
Dundee. Yes, okay.
So Dundee for me was about, it's the collide between technology and, I guess, psychology, the kind of, those interesting aspects. And it was at the time where, there's a lot of games development coming out of Dundee, and it was a very kind of, there were very few places that were putting emphasis on computer science and, actual technology. And it was a very cool place to be a student. There's, a lot of the Perth Road to drink down and drink back up. But it was a great place to go to uni, and kind of really really set me up. And after that, I went down to London for a few years, where I worked for a psychometric testing company. So all of those personality
wow.
tests and things like that. And that was very exciting.
So tell me, Brie, people always tell me about these things. I've never taken one, but do they work?
So they do. Some of them are a lot more robust than other ones, but they really do work, and they give you a really interesting insight into who you are innately and how you can change that to be better at work. Because
Right.
everybody has different levels of get up and go and detail consciousness. And when you know that about yourself, you can edit it to your working environment. I worked for SHL, so they did Belbin's team types, and OPQ32 were the big ones that we did.
I've had
Although I'm a
I've
big,
been through a
big
couple of
fan of
psychometric
Myers-Briggs.
charting tests in my life.
Yeah.
I'd love to see the results of them, Willie.
Well, funny, both of them said the same thing. Is he alive?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Continue your
Yeah.
story.
So I went from there, and then I worked, I did a lot of kind of innovation there, and then worked for Sainsbury's on the launch of Be Good to Yourself and Taste the Difference, which was really interesting.
All right.
And understanding what customers really want when they're buying, they're buying food and they're buying that kind of fast moving kind of consumer goods. And then I got really sick of living in England and wanted to move back up to Scotland. So I
Very good.
moved up to Scotland, and I worked for Seafish, which is one of the government agencies that looks after fishing in the UK. And I got to work with everybody from fishermen, so like Jimmy Buchan on his trailer, to like Youngs, and the whole kind of gamut of business. So I saw really big business and really small business, and it was a very, very interesting learning experience. And then I went from there to ICS in Glasgow, which is a kind of distance learning company, and that had lots of challenges at the time. A lot of them around things like, the biggest day of the year was A-level results day, because when people failed, they would then buy our A-levels. And instead of selling them full price on that day, historically, ICS had always sold them at half price. So we took the decision to sell them at full price on that day, and you have to hold your nerve and see what happens. And we cut down a lot of, 90% of profit was coming from 3% of courses. So we cut a lot of courses back and made a lot of these really bold decisions that made a big difference to profitability. But the entire time you're going, oh my God, please work, please work, please work, please work. Because, so much of the business's turnover is reliant on these decisions that you're making, which was great. And then I worked for the postcode lottery for a bit. And that was interesting. And I applied for a job with Kevin, and I'll never forget the moment, because
This is Kevin Doran we're talking about.
Kevin Doran, yep. And I was taking a tour of a call center in Glasgow, and they were like, they were showing us round, and they had all these washing facilities. And I got the call from Kevin. I could see it was him, and I was like, I just have to go for a second. And I went into a room that was just me and a washing machine, and Kevin was like, I'd like to offer you the job. And I was, when you have that moment where you're like, this is going to change the rest of my life, and it's a bit of a golden moment, and they're having this lovely moment like in this room with a washing machine in a call center in Glasgow. It was like, okay.
So that was Diet Chef, Brie.
Yeah, and that was Diet Chef. So I worked for Kevin at Diet Chef, and that was my first real experience of a proper startup and kind of growth business, and the different kind of mindset you need for that. And then I got very into Facebook marketing, digital marketing, how that all works. And we used it to very much grow the business at Diet Chef. And after that, I started a Facebook agency, which was my first ever kind of business on my own.
Right.
So we did Facebook with lots of big brands.
Just for the listeners and the viewers, going from working for someone else to starting your own, you're kind of brushed over it, but it's a huge decision to make. So how did you get the confidence to do it? And talk us through that kind of decision process.
I'm not sure I had a choice, really. I think by that point I was probably unemployable from an actual business perspective.
Right.
After you've run it, and Kevin let me run Diet Chef as CEO. And I think once you've taken that mantle, it's very difficult to kind of go back and, be a yes person again. And I think I was in a position then where I had to do something where I could be in control of it. And at the time, Facebook was showing, 10, 20%, 30% ROAS. It was an incredible platform to be on, and we had a very good way of running it, and it was a very kind of special time. And we got to, Ralph Lauren were our clients, Hush was our clients, Bowden. We had some of the biggest names in the UK on our platform, learning how to sell their incredible products to customers online. And then kind of midway through that, I had an experience of my own where I was walking down George Street and my tights fell down, and it was very embarrassing. And I was like, either I'm gonna think about this every night while I'm going to sleep forever about how embarrassing this moment was, 300 people going, oh my God, or I can turn it into something positive. So I talked to all my friends about it, and all my friends had problems with their tights as well. And, I was like, this is a kind of tremendous problem. But I need to know how big it is, right? So I did a Google survey of 3,000 people, paid for it to understand the scale of the problem. And it turned out that 90% of people, 90% of people couldn't find tights that fit. And then I started doing the market calculations about how big this market was. And the market is worth $56 billion.
Wow.
And I was like, a $56 billion market where 90% of people are unhappy with the product. I was like, I think I found my bit now. This is the bit where I can do something. And then I had to work out how you actually fix tights. Is it fixable? What were the problems? And that took 2 years. And then when I was convinced I had a product that worked, it was time to launch, and that's where Snag was born. And we've gone from there.
Wow. So give us a wee feel for the size of the business today, Brie.
So we're between about 40 and 50 million at the moment.
Wow.
So it's
a
and we've
big
been
business.
trading for not yet 7 years, so 6 years trading. And it's grown really quickly. And now we don't just do tights, we've fixed loads of other problems. So we do things like jeans and trousers and dresses and underwear. And we've got this whole great battery of products which are absolutely incredible and completely size inclusive. So we're inclusive from a size 4 right the way up to a size 38. So it's the same product for everybody, which is, I think we're the only business probably in the world that does that, which is really fun as well.
Right. So growing the business at that rate, Brie, how do you get the knowledge to scale up your business?
So we were really lucky actually, because we got to go on a very cool scale up course.
Oh, the
Which
scale
I
up
think you know
course.
about.
I thought you might get that in there.
Um, and that was really useful because it's an interesting. Starting a business is one thing, running a business is one thing, trying to grow it is a completely other
Yeah.
thing. And I think having the expertise there to talk to people who'd done it before and who really understood what that journey looked like really helps. And even if the decisions that you make aren't the traditional ones, so for us, we've never gone for investment or anything like that. That's, we're a trading business. We want to keep trading. That's what we do. Being able to understand and see it from different perspectives, I think really does help you make those decisions.
Wow.
What do you think is the potential to grow the business? Obviously, it's a £56 billion industry, but what's your own plan? What you think is achievable?
So we want to be a £1 billion business, and we've got a plan in place now for the next 2 years where we're doubling our revenue. And I think I've always heard from people that step from the kind of 40, 50 to 100 million is that kind of hard step. And then when you break the 100 million, everything gets a little bit easier, according to people. So at least I hope that's my big hope. So yeah, over the next couple of years, our aim is to get to that 100 million place. And then once we're there, we can work out how we get the rest of the way.
That's a huge target.
I'm always about the huge targets. If you can't dream it, you can't do it. You have to imagine it first, otherwise it's never going to happen for you.
And how do you plan to try and achieve that target? What's your advertising strategy? What do you plan to do?
Well, so at the moment we're entirely online. So the first part, so we've got about 2.4 million customers globally. About 1 million of those are in the UK. About 700,000 of them are in the US, and then the rest of them are split between Europe and Australia, Asia. So our big step this year is about working with the countries in Europe that we're not established in yet and pushing where we are in America. We've got a really good foothold, but we can do even more. And with just that part of it, we should be able to double where we are now. And after that, it's very much about, do we want to continue being an online business? Do we want to go into bricks and mortar? How do we tackle Asia? How do we break that market? Because we have, for instance, a huge amount of Koreans that buy our product, and we don't market there. We don't do anything. It's all organic, and how can we take those pockets where we know we've got real interest, where we haven't even touched the market yet, and kind of grow those as well. So it's a kind of step-by-step plan of both expanding into new markets, but also taking more share of people's clothing budget. So, we don't just want them to buy tights with us. Yeah, our tights are great, but our knickers are incredible and our bras are even better. And why would you be spending money with somebody else when you could spend it with us? And you know that every single person who's touched your product has been paid the living wage. We've used the most ethical materials. We haven't used any single-use plastic through the entire journey of that product, and those are the things that are really important to us. Plus, we fit every single piece on a real person in every single size in multiple body shapes. So the industry average returns rate, to give you an example, is 45% of all clothing that gets bought gets returned, and almost 100% of that goes into landfill. Our returns rate is under 2% because the product actually fits people properly. So 45% in the industry, under 2% for us, and obviously none of that goes to landfill.
What's your biggest market?
Our biggest market in the moment is the UK, followed by the US, and then followed by Germany.
So Brie, can I ask, we've got a minute left. The listeners and the viewers are always looking for wee nuggets, and your story is remarkable. So first of all, well done.
Yeah.
Have you got any little nuggets for people out there who are thinking, well, first of all, between being in an employment and then starting your business and then actually scaling it? I love the thought, if you can't dream it, you can't do it. But any little nuggets of genius out there?
I think it's just about being brave in that first moment. And for me, it's always that moment when you decide to do something different that you could not do it, right? You sit at a precipice and you could either go over the edge or you stay where you are. And every part of your body is telling you to stay where you are, but you have to jump. And it's like, if you don't make the jump, you'll never be able to get all of the benefits that you could have. And the risk is always greater to do it, doing it, than it is not doing it at all. So I'm a big fan of risk, and I'm a big fan of just pushing yourself to take that step, because if you have to pivot later, you have to pivot later. But if you don't take that first step, you're not getting anywhere. So I think that's really important for me.
So give the company a big plug. How can people find you?
So we're at snagtights.com. Come and see us. We've got, beautiful clothes in every size. Our tights are absolutely incredible. Our knickers are even better. And we've actually fixed jeans. So if you ever talk to women about jeans, they hate jeans. And we've fixed jeans so comfortable that you can sit on the floor, play with your kids, run around, and they are just incredible. So yeah, if you've ever thought your clothing was uncomfortable, just come to us and we've fixed it.
Brie, thank you. What a story. The greatest story never told.
Well, Brie, that was fascinating. A journey from China, Dubai, Dundee, and Oxford, and then world domination. So listen, more power to your elbow. Keep in touch with the show. Let us know how you're getting on to that $1 billion target. And I have got a sneaky feeling you're going to do it. So good on you.
Thank you.
And the best of
Go
luck.
Radio Business Show with Hunter and Haughey. Hit subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and never miss an episode.
Tom,
Yes.
not a brilliant guest this week on the board you can't afford, right? Karen McFadden.
Hello.
Right? Hi, Karen. And Karen is the founder of Money Insights. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so psyched to be here.
Karen, do you know anything about gold?
gold, apart from liking it.
'Cause Willie's driving me mad about gold, and I don't know anything about gold, but he's determined to be Goldfinger. So you don't know anything about gold?
As in the James Bond element, or
We were talking earlier,
Hopefully not.
earlier about the price of gold going through the roof, and we were asking, how do you buy gold? Does somebody send you a certificate and somebody keeps it in a bank for you? So we're interested.
So anyway,
It's all about you, Cam. Tell us about
all about
yourself.
Tell us about you and your business.
oh gosh, where to start? Yeah, well, I launched Money Insights about 3 months ago in December.
Months.
I've almost been doing it, the model on a very small scale for 5 years. I've been self-employed.
Okay.
But I realised that what I was doing from a small scale, businesses were just missing out on a lot of money. So I thought, well, now that I've built up 5 years of contacts, knowledge, business money advice, I should put this into a brand.
So just explain to me who your ideal customer would be and what you could do for them.
Sure. So ideal customers, it's Money Insights is a business finance community. So
Right.
the people that are part of it, the people that make up members, are those who are looking for financial opportunities. So that'd be business owners and accountants and advisors. And then the other side is finance experts. So what I do, I'm essentially a financial matchmaker. So I take opportunities like grants, tax incentives, funding initiatives, business savings, and I match those opportunities to experts that can help my members get the most out of these opportunities. And then I kind of package them together in a nice bundle, and I pass that out to my members every month. And the whole point is to help the members find more ways to make, save, and maximise their money.
Right.
So would you be someone who would know what was on offer from Gateway, from Scottish Enterprise? So you all over that to find out if a small business came to you and says, I'm trying to do this, and you say, well, do you know that you're entitled to get that?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, one of the really nice case studies at the moment is one of my members actually got a money insight from ourselves about Scottish Edge as well, and they've also gone for it, and they're through to the semi-finals. So
They're through to the semi-finals,
Yes,
are they?
yes.
Right, okay.
So
Are you thinking of applying?
I have applied, and I'm also through to semi-finals. So
I mean, Evelyn McDonald is a gem,
yeah,
and I don't allow them to ever say no to anybody. It's not yet.
Mhm.
So if they think, I'm not saying they would in your
No,
case,
no, of
but
course.
if they thought you weren't ready, they would give you the feedback to say, look, Karen, I think if you worked on this, and this, and then come back. And, I can't remember the stats, but a lot of the people who get Money on Edge, it's not their first time or their
I've
first
heard that, yes.
and we really want to build in that resilience in the entrepreneurs so that, when did it ever happen first time for any of us,
Yeah, of course.
You've got to be really lucky for that. But good luck with it.
Can I ask you, and how do you monetize that, Karen? How do you get paid?
Sure. So there's
Percentage of success? Or?
there's two avenues. So one will be the membership side of things,
Yeah.
and the other side is the matches that are made, so the partner introductions, and there's a commission split. But it's at the moment, because it's so new, I'm running an early adopters trial.
Yeah.
So it's really just to get members to come on and obviously test the validity of the site. At the end of the day, business owners are missing out on this kind of incentives and opportunities. So I'm trying to understand, okay, what type of members? Is it startups that are coming on? Is it SMEs? Is it scaling businesses? And what insights are they interested in? Are they looking at ways to find money, or is it once they get 100k, how do they turn it into $1 million? In fact, just as your previous guest Brie was talking about.
Yeah.
So anyone listening or watching this morning, how much would it cost them for a membership?
At the moment, it's £10
Yeah.
for the
£10.
for the early adopters trial.
What? Yeah.
And once we get to 100 members, we're about halfway there.
Right.
Once we get to 100 members, I'll be doubling it.
Yeah.
But then there'll also be a sort of money managed tier, like an account managed tier,
Yeah.
where our staff would act as an extension to a member's finance team. So, they would go off and look for these opportunities, they
I
would
see.
facilitate the introductions, and that would be more expensive.
So anyone looking to join just now, have you got kind of case studies that you've been involved in that you can demonstrate how you've been helpful to other companies?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, my partners are, they're finance experts across a whole range of topics. So you've got experts in the tax world, energy savings, grants applications, and I've obviously had sort of 5 to 7 years being in the tax industry myself. So I've had plenty of case studies where we're talking hundreds of thousands of pounds being saved for members. So yeah, so it's really exciting actually to share the case studies, because this is money that some members have no idea exists.
Right. So how do they get hold of you?
So I have my website, moneyinsights.uk.
.uk.
Right.
Yeah, just .uk. And then I'm on LinkedIn. I'm quite active on LinkedIn.
Right.
So
So it might be the best tenner you've ever spent.
yeah, best
That's
one
it.
yet.
A tenner. Wow.
So what's your question for the boards you can't afford?
So I'm curious in regards to scaling. Obviously, at the moment, it's just myself and I'm a little solopreneur, and I'm taking the knowledge that I've learned and trying to grow. And I'm not wanting to scale too quickly. I don't want to go to an investor and ask for all this money, etc. But what I'm curious about is, if you think you're onto something, what are the fundamental things you should get right now when you're small, so that when you then reach that epic magic wand stage, you don't mess it up?
Well, the number one thing is obviously is building the brand, but more importantly, building your reputation, right? And that's the key, absolute key for the type of business that you're in, especially when you talk about finance. So for me, that's the number one thing, and it's building that brand. Your success will come by someone telling someone who's telling someone who's telling someone, and it's brilliant. I mean, we've just had another lady entrepreneur, another budding lady. We need more and more, right? We need more and more. I've always said this to you for years and years. I think that women are more equipped to work on the financial side of businesses than guys. They understand it more. They know about not being stupid and spending money that you haven't got.
Depends on which women you're talking to.
Well, I can only talk about my other half, and I wouldn't be sitting here today if it wasn't her saying, don't tell him how much we've got, right? So, but I would say that for me, that if you're trying to get the magic sauce about how can you take this embryonic business and grow it like this, it's going to be a slow burn, but when you build up a reputation, especially when you've got finance involved, you'll be amazed that someone told someone who told someone who told someone, right?
Yeah.
So I think that will be, don't think for a minute you can get out of this as a magic sauce and you're going to double. But if you everybody I know who's been a successful financial, taking time. But they've all, I mean, a guy came to see me last week, and this is a guy coming to give me pension planning advice, and we couldn't find anywhere to park his Bentley in the car park. So see if you take your time, things will work out.
Don't turn up a client in a Bentley.
No,
That's
wouldn't
it.
a good idea.
I'll get my chauffeur who drives the Bentley.
Yes, that's it. Just drop you at the door. So I think that's great advice from Willie, Karen. Obviously, when you're just starting out, you need to build your network. And what we've found is the best people to learn from is other entrepreneurs. So whether it's joining Entrepreneurial Scotland, and Sean can help you with that, or Edge. Edge isn't, people think Edge is just about money. But Evelyn and I have been doing this for so long that the money is secondary. It's about the advice, it's about the network, it's about the people you meet. So, as Willie said, you need to get out there and get your network. And then you can bounce your ideas off others. And once you trust another entrepreneur, then you can be honest, because we all say, oh, how's business? Oh, it's great. Whereas we all know, no, I'm struggling with this or that. But you need to build trust with fellow entrepreneurs. But what we're trying to do is build a network of peer-to-peer, so you learn and then you can support the next ones coming along. So that's what we're trying to do in our foundation for there. So if there's any ways, you just need to go on the website, Scale Up Scotland, and you'll see all of that. But, the other thing that we coach is learn by doing. there's nothing beats it. You know, people sit with a spreadsheet and think, oh, well, won't I? Well, manage your downside. What's the worst that could happen? And then try it. Try it.
I think that over the next 3 years, what would look like success for you would be the next time we see you, you come back and say, I managed to do okay at the edge. Maybe the first time you told me I come back, but by the way, the great news is I'm joining the next cohort of Scale Up. Right, that's big success. Right, the people we will meet in the journey who might need a wee bit of what you do. Let's see this. The great thing that I love about Scale Up is that cross-fertile.
Yeah.
Right, you know, we back in the days with East Park, we used to see a company that was really good at marketing and a company with a really good product, and we'd try and put them together. Right, yeah, and I think that for you, that would be a couple of targets I would give myself. And if we here in the next couple, that's what's happened, that would be success. That means that you're doing that.
But Willie is right about reputation, especially giving financial advice.
Yeah.
You only need to have one person saying, oh, Karen was murder.
Yeah.
But if you get, no, you can trust Karen, she wasn't shoving product down my throat, she took time to understand my issue, then that's gold. Willie knows all about gold. But that is gold for you, because every entrepreneur is a potential client as well.
Yeah.
So, but listen, keep in touch with the show. Give your business one more plug into what camera?
Yeah.
This one here.
Yes, so Money Insights is a business finance community, and every insight we share with our members helps them find simple ways to make, save and maximise their money. So,
and how do they get hold of you?
On moneyinsights.uk, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn and we can chat there.
And everybody listening or watching this, we need more successful women entrepreneurs. Get that number, give it a tinkle.
Great, Karen.
Wonderful, thank you so
Lovely
much,
to
guys.
meet you.
All right, brilliant. Thank you. Tom, not a wonderful show.
In the can.
Brilliant. I know you thought it was a wee bit negative, but I think you tried to liven it up a wee bit. I think I was a wee bit downbeat this week. We're getting too political. Hopefully next week we'll remedy that. But for all the viewers and listeners, thank you for checking us out, and we can't wait to be back here next week.
Yeah, it is the Go Radio Business Show. We were a wee bit political this week, but tune in next week and see if Willie is gold member and how much money he's made. So until we see you next week, take care.
All the best.
Go Radio Business Show with Hunter and Haughey. Hit subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and never miss an episode.